I'm here in Scotch Plains at John's Meat Market to see my buddies Vinny and Nikki and pick up some great veal for our show today. Hello, I'm David Martone, Executive Chef at Classic Time Cooking School. Today we have a great show with 3 veal dishes. Oh, my dear friend Vita from Brooklyn, it was actually my brother-in-law's mother-in-law, taught me this dish, spadini, tiny little veal rolled up and stuffed. We're going to make an osso buco, and we're also going to do another great veal dish, tiny veal meatballs, fresh baby artichokes, caramelized cherry tomatoes, finished with white wine. 3 great dishes. Let's get down to work. I'm slicing my onions to make the sauce for the veal spadini. We're going to get our pan on the stove. I'm going to get this all cooking up. You got to be real careful when you're doing the onion because you don't want to cut the onion too small. You don't want to cut the garlic too small. We're putting some olive oil in the pan. Please, no extra virgin olive oil when you're heating, just regular olive oil. So I sliced my onion up. The onion will go in. It'll come apart as it's cooking and getting tender. I'm going to take a couple of cloves of garlic, a couple different ways you can do the garlic. You can either slice it all up this way, and then after it's sliced, you pile it all up and you chop through it a couple of different directions, or you can take that garlic and simply smash it, and then that starts the process and you get it all chopped up nice. Again, go through it. So we've got it done 2 different ways. We're going to come out with the same result. Get the garlic in with the onion. Make sure your oven is preheated for the veal. I take my veal cutlets. These are leg sections, so you have to pound them a little bit. I like to use the pointed side rather than the flat side, so I'm not smashing it. This pointed side will actually help tenderize it. You just want to pound them a little bit on both sides. Again, you don't want to destroy the veal. It's very delicate. I'm just going to separate that a little bit. Garlic is cooking nicely. Oh, Vita, she's such a character. Wonderful, wonderful dishes. She speaks a little bit of broken English, and it makes it all that much more interesting. She understands half of what I say. Actually, she understands everything I say. I understand about 80% of what she says, so I constantly have to ask her again and again. Little salt and pepper on these veal cutlets. I always hope I'm not annoying her when I'm asking her constantly what's happening. But over the years, I've gotten to know her accent, and we communicate pretty well. I'm going to flip these over and season the opposite side. I'm using kosher salt, which is very easy to work with and spread out. And I like to do it from up high. This way it kind of broadcasts out and I don't get any puddling of the salt. Okay, you see that garlic is browning up nicely and the onion is getting tender and translucent. We're always worried about overcooking, over browning the garlic and the onion because it starts to get bitter as it gets darker. We're going to add our tomato sauce. Sometimes this splashes a little, so be ready to deal with that if it happens. Mix it around a little bit to get it all coated. Okay. I'm going to add my breadcrumb now. I'm going to lower down the heat. The breadcrumb starts to absorb the tomato sauce, and you keep adding until you have it till it's firm and it'll hold together. I think I need just a little bit more. Okay, that's looking good. So we keep putting more breadcrumbs until this holds together and the stuffing really firms up. Now I'm going to transfer this out of the pan because we don't want it too hot. We have to put some cheese in, and the cheese will start to melt and get all gummy if I leave it too long in something hot. I'm using Pecorino Romano cheese, and actually I grew up using what's called Locatelli, which is a brand name. Growing up in Jersey City, my mother would always say, go get me Locatelli. And the Locatelli is actually Pecorino, a brand of Pecorino Romano cheese, but they had a plant in Jersey City. So I mixed that Pecorino Romano. Yes, Mom, it's Locatelli. Now we're going to put this filling right in our veal cutlets so we can roll them up. They can be skewered. They can be tucked together with little toothpicks. Sometimes we leave them without anything. And then we just roll them up nicely. Oh, they're looking so wonderful. Vita, you're going to be proud of me, Vita. And I'll put little toothpicks just to tuck these together and keep them from opening up. If you put them in without the toothpicks and they opened up, it wouldn't be terrible. So these are going to cook in the oven. Depending on your oven temperature, they usually cook about 10 to 15 minutes. I have my oven on about 450 degrees. So we're going to slide them right into the oven now. And we'll let them cook. You do need to watch them every once in a while because you just never put anything in a pan or in the oven and just walk away from it. So every couple of minutes I'm going to take a peek at it, make sure that they're not overcooking, make sure they're cooking quick enough. So 10-15 minutes cooking time. Oh, look at this. Very hot, very hot. Now, after probably 12 minutes we had them in, maybe my oven's a little bit hotter, have some wonderful, wonderful spadini. I'm going to just take these out. Be careful, they're hot. And pull out these skewers. Very important, don't forget the toothpick skewers. You wouldn't want anybody to bite in and be surprised with that. Put them on our plate. Maybe we'll pretty it up a little bit. A little bit of parsley. I don't think Vito will mind the parsley. Just wipe back a little bit. And here's our veal spadini. Again, they're like little braciole. And Vita tells me that they're made only on holidays in a little town she grew up in Sicily. We're going to, now that we have one dish done, we're going to go to work on our ossobuco. You're going to love this ossobuco, but it's a little bit different. We're going to make it the way it's made in Italy versus the way it's served here in America. Well, now we're back to make ossobuco. Wonderful, wonderful meal. Now, when you have this in Italy, the cuts of meat are a lot thinner. We don't focus on meat as a big, massive part of the meal in Italy. Here in America, they serve ossobuco. It's huge, 2-3 inches thick. We're going to start off, it's a veal shank cut. We're going to salt and pepper, like we do every time we're doing a meat. And I'm also going to flour this. So since I have just one here, I can just rub this with a little flour. Then we'll flip it off. We'll shake it a little bit to get some of the excess flour before it actually goes in the pan. Salt and pepper. And our flour again. Got our pan heating up here. I'm going to add our olive oil. Again, it's regular olive oil and not extra virgin. I can't say that enough. Now we get our veal all ready. And just pound off a little bit of that flour. And while that's cooking, I'm going to start cutting up what we call our aromatics. I have celery, leek, shallot, carrot. Celery pieces, very simple, split them in half. None of this has to be perfectly precise. We have some celery, some carrot, Oops, little piece of celery stuck with my carrot. These are baby carrots, so it makes it real easy. You don't have to peel anything. You see one of them flew away over there. Shallot, like a small onion, but much more mild. I'm going to take that one end off we don't need. So you deal with the shallot the same way as an onion. The leek is the tricky one. You have to be very careful when you clean leek. This needs to be split down the middle, which we've already run water through it, but you can check to make sure that you've flushed away all of your dirt. If this starts to splash a little, just lower your flame. And then we're only going to chop the bottom half of the leek, nice slices. I think that'll be enough leek. We generally cut up to about this high with the leek, and we save the top part for making stock. This should be browning up nicely. I'm going to flip it over and add my aromatics. So as this other side is browning, we're also dealing with the aromatics getting tender. Now, we have some plum tomatoes, which we've broken up. Just simple plum tomatoes in a can. What I like to do with them is poke my finger in and tear them open rather than squeeze them because they explode. And then I break them up just in nice small pieces. Again, we don't want to pulverize it. We tend to torture food here in America, which is not what we want to do at all. It should never be painful for us or for the food. So just take your time, deal with it passionately, deal with it in a kind manner. Okay, aromatics are getting tender. Other side of the veal is getting browned. We're going to add our tomatoes. I'm going to just turn that veal one more time. Yeah, it's looking lovely. Now we need a little bit of stock and a little bit of white wine. We need a little chicken stock or veal stock. This I'm doing on a light way, so I'm using the chicken stock. If I were doing a beef shank versus a veal shank, then I would probably use a red wine instead of a white wine, keeping it darker instead of lighter. Here's our white wine. And then we're going to bring this up to a simmer. That's going to form our juice. Now, I can cook this on the stove top very slowly with a lid, or I can put it in the oven. When I put it in the oven, instead of using a lid, I like to drape it with a little bit of foil. So I'm going to take my sheets of foil and just tuck this around my pan, and see how I'm pinching it off where I gather the aluminum. The reason I'm using the aluminum instead of the lid is because while this is cooking, I want this juice to reduce and thicken up and become very intense. So I've got my oven preheated. I'm going to put this in now. When you're cooking this dish, the oven should not be too high. We don't want the oven to be up in the 400 range. We want to be down in more the 325 range so that it cooks slowly. You'll need to check it every once in a while because as that reduces, you don't want it to dry up completely and burn. Now we need to make a little bit of the garnish for this, which is simple. Some garlic, and again, we can smash the garlic and chop it, or we can simply slice it up and then chop it in multiple directions. So I just get this started. This needs to actually be nice and fine. A little bit of parsley. Oops, get rid of that stem. We don't want any stems in. And we have some lemon zest. We're just simply grating the outside of the lemon. Be careful not to take too much of the white pith, just the very outside. And then we're going to chop this all together, and this is our gremolata, which will be the finishing garnish for the ossobuco. See, as I just keep combining this, you get the wonderful essence of the lemon, the parsley, and the fresh, robust flavor of the garlic. This is a dish that I love to have when I'm in Italy, but I eat it as a middle course. So our gremolata is ready. I'll just leave this here, and I'm going to take another peek at my veal to see how it's doing. Okay, so this is very hot coming out of the oven, so be extremely careful. Yes, I have a glove on, but when I take the glove off, I put it right on the handle because you're just too inclined to pick it up. So you want to take a look at, oh, look at how lovely that's reduced down. It's getting nice and thick and fortified. I think we're ready to plate this up. So we're going to get our ossobuco shank onto our plate and spoon some of this lovely liquid on top. You know, when you're in Italy, this is a second course, not the main course. A little bit of the gremolata on top. I start by ordering a pizza. Then I order a salad. Then I have an ossobuco. Then I have a pasta. Then I look around and see what everybody else is eating. And then maybe I start all over again. This is the way we should eat. Instead of having a 3-inch, 4-inch ossobuco and sitting back, you can't move after you eat it, smaller courses, thinner courses. The meat isn't the main focus of the meal. Our ossobuco is ready to go. The only thing I might do is to make it perfect. Take care in everything that you do, everything comes out better. Here's our wonderful ossobuco, and now I think we'll start to work on our tiny veal meatball. It just keeps getting better and better. Tiny veal meatballs, baby artichokes, caramelized tomatoes. Oh, second dish done, one more to go. Okay, this one is my favorite. Tiny veal meatballs, fresh baby artichokes, caramelized cherry tomatoes, inspired by Every Day in Tuscany, written by Francis Mays. So we're gonna get 2 pans going. This is gonna be a really fast-moving recipe. I've gotta do a bunch of things at the same time. So first, I've got some polenta all sliced in rounds. I'm gonna put a little bit of regular olive oil. Remember my pet peeve, I never heat extra virgin olive oil. I always use regular olive oil for everything where I'm applying heat. If I want extra virgin olive oil, I put it at the end. So I'm just oiling these up a little bit so I can get them grilled nicely. Don't be afraid to work your hands with your food, massage your food, love your food. I'm gonna get these grilling up nicely. And then we're gonna make our stuffing. Okay. Little olive oil in our pan for our meatballs. And we're going to make that mix ground veal, cracked egg. Of course, we add some salt, pepper, my Pecorino Romano cheese. Mom, I'm using Locatelli, I promise. Let's put it all, she likes cheese. And some breadcrumbs. I'm just using a prepackaged seasoned breadcrumb mix, and I'm going to mix this up with my hands. Again, don't be afraid to work your hands. Get that egg, hold everything together. Make sure all the dry ingredients are incorporated with the wet. That's why you kind of squeeze through it. I hear our polenta cooking, so I'll lower that just a little bit. Okay, we're perfect with these. Now, to make these little meatballs, now I've got this pan heating up. You can do it the easy way. Tiny little scoop will ensure that you get them all the same size. So if I start scooping out a bunch of this, when I roll them, they'll all be exactly the same size. It's a good way to train somebody to make meatballs. Of course, Mom doesn't have to use the scoop. She makes them perfect every time. Okay, then I take them. I like to pack them a little, give them a roll, We'll place them right in our pan. My mother could make tiny little meatballs the size of a dime, hundreds of them that she puts in chicken soup. That'll be another show. Nina's favorite chicken soup made from a fresh chicken. Once we get these in the pan, we'll get them browned on each side, and we'll start cooking our artichokes, or cutting our artichokes. It's all going to wind up finishing in the same pan. See how they're all nicely formed, exactly the same size. Take a look at our polenta just to make sure that we're not cooking too much perfect. Okay, we'll let that continue. Now for the artichokes. Little baby artichokes. We want to have a bowl with some fresh squeezed lemon in the water so it stays acidified so that the artichokes don't really darken and turn really brown. We're going to start to use this as my scrap bowl where my eggshell is. We're going to use this artichoke, only the center. We're peeling off all the outside leaves that aren't as tender as the inside. So I want to get down to where you start to see nice and yellow. See how that's changing? It's getting tighter. I think we're about perfect. Pull off any little bits that are still hanging on. We're going to trim the stem. See how nice and green it is? This is what it looks like after it sits for a long time. Then we're going to slice off about 1/3 of the top. Because they're baby artichokes, the spiny choke in the center hasn't yet formed. And we're going to simply slice these artichokes into thin slices, putting them right in our lemon water. Make sure they're completely covered with the water. Now the little meatballs, we just want to start moving them around. You can see they're getting browned nicely. I'll tell you, if you ever want to go on a mental vacation, just listen to Frances May's books, Under the Tuscan Sun. Wonderful series. We're going to flip these over. Perfect. Get that out of the garbage bowl. And while that's going, I have my little cherry tomatoes. They're all washed. We want to just pull off the little stems if there are any. And now when you're doing tomatoes, make sure that you're using a serrated knife so that when you cut the tomato, if the tomato is overripe, the serrated knife pierces the skin and it stops from squashing the tomato. Yep, one more. Okay. Little meatballs are cooked nicely. Let's add our artichoke. Little splash because of the water. Some of these I just use on salad. Now I'm adding some garlic. I have some sliced up garlic. I'm adding the garlic after the fact because I don't want that to overcook my tomatoes. A little bit of white wine. And this just needs to cook for a minute. We raise the heat up to soften everything up nicely. And we're just going to let this cook for about 2 minutes till the liquid reduces down and starts to form a more fortified sauce. Here's the last of our 3 dishes, the tiny veal meatballs with the baby artichokes, caramelized tomatoes, finished with white wine over some grilled polenta. You've been watching Cooking Time. I'm David Martone, Executive Chef. Join us again for some wonderful recipes from the Garden State. Thank you, Vita, for the wonderful spadini recipe. Thank you, Italy, for all the inspiration, and Francis Mays for the idea of this wonderful dish here. Now remember, we had our osso buco, and we had our veal spadini, and we finished with the tiny veal meatballs. Thank you, and join us again.